Hello everyone, this is Reza Vaizi and you are going to learn basics of data visualization through this recording. Okay, let's start with this question. What is data visualization? Basically, when you want to convey a story or an idea as efficiently as possible, you will use data visualization in your reports. As you all know, a picture can potentially paint 1,000 words, can potentially be worth 1,000 words. And no matter how large your data is and how big the volume is, the patterns can be identified quickly and easily through data visualization. It is also one of the growing parts of data analytics. And as you will see in most of your assignments, you'll have to use some sort of data visualization. Becoming expert in data visualization will help you a lot if you choose to focus on data analytics for your future career. So, in short, data visualization is a representation of data using charts, graphs, or maps, or you can hear plots as well. And it conveys the information in a universal manner that everybody can understand, especially that if you are dealing with a team of multinational people. Data visualization always helps you to convey your meaning, to convey what you want to say in a better and more efficient way. As you learn data visualization about displaying data using charts and graphs, here are some major chart types that you are going to learn throughout this recording. We'll start with column, bar, and histogram, move to box, whisker, or quartile charts, and at the end we'll cover bubble charts. You will know about what they are and what we use them for through this recording. Before we get into different chart types, let's familiarize ourselves with chart elements. On this slide, you will see the chart title on top, and you can see the chart legend on the right. The chart legend helps your readers to understand your chart better. It can be placed around your chart, or you can eliminate that legend and put the labels on the chart itself. You can also see X and Y axis in this chart in this slide. On the x-axis we have year, and on the y-axis we have the number of products sold in this example. You also see some chart background and background color. Towards the end you will learn that background colors, or as a matter of fact any color that does not add anything to the chart, does not add any understanding, and does not represent a new dimension, or does not take reader's attention to something very important in your chart, is a chart junk, and you should avoid it. The first chart that you're going to learn about is histogram. Histogram is one of the most basic visual ways to understand the frequency of occurrence of a range of values for one variable. It approximately determines the distribution of data by plotting the frequency of occurrence in a range. As you can see, there are different numbers of bins in the histogram. For a continuous variable, the rule of thumb is to have the number of bins equal to the square root of the number of data points. For categorical or nominal variable, the number of bins typically is equal to the number of categories within the variable. So to summarize, histogram is really good for observing one variable and figuring out the distribution, whether the variable follows a normal distribution or it does have some sort of skewed distribution. Next is quartile or box whisker charts. They are really good to show range of continuous variable along with quartiles, median, and outliers information. You can also use them to compare multiple distribution or multiple ranges side by side for different variables. They demonstrate quartile 1, quartile 2, and quartile 3 points. 25% of your data points will be below quartile 1, 50% below quartile 2, and 75% below quartile 3. Quartile 1 and quartile 3 are the edges of the box. Quartile 2 indicated by a cross line within the box. The mean is that dot within the box. And those empty dots or circles are your outliers. And these are statistical outliers. Next are column and bar charts. Column and bar charts are good for comparison across categories. When you have different categories and you want to compare them with each other, you usually use column and bar chart. The difference between column and bar chart is that one is vertical, which is the column chart, and the other one is horizontal. Next in the order is the line chart. Line charts are really good when the focus is to show trends over time. So if you want to show trends over time or over categories, a line chart is usually the chart to go with. Area charts are a variation of line charts. They are a little bit more complicated forms of line charts, and they are used to show trends or to display trends across time. On this example, you can see that Internet Explorer started gaining more users from 1996 till 2003, and after that it started losing some of the market to Firefox till 2009. Pie chart is another familiar chart which mainly is used to compare contribution of parts to the whole. It only can show one data series, and as you can see in this picture, you can see that in year 2000 how each categories of equipment, footwear and apparel contributed to the whole sales. So 44% of the sales for this specific company at year 2000 came from equipment, 30% from footwear and 26% from apparel. Doughnut charts are a specific case of pie charts. Similar to pie charts, they are used when you want to display contribution of different parts to a whole. The difference that doughnut charts have with pie charts is that on doughnut charts you can display more than one data series. So remember from the previous slide, pie chart was only good for 1 year, one cross section of your data, year 2000. But on this picture, each ring within Doughnut represents 1 year. And starting from inside out is from year 2000 to year 2007. So you can see at each year how these different categories contributed to the sales for that year and in overall. Next is XY scatter charts. Scatter charts or scatter plots are one of the most used charts in data analytics. You usually go through them, you usually start looking at them at the time of data understanding, when you want to have a better understanding of your data and when you want to explore some initial trends and gain some initial insights about your data. You usually start looking at scatter plots or scatter charts. They are simple and easy to understand, and they show a logical relationship between pair of variables. They can indicate that a correlation exists between pair of variables. If variables are correlated, data points align closer to an imaginary line. Here on this example, you can see that we have age and experience index. And as you can see, as age increases, the experience increases as well. And as you all know, that's not always the case. Some people are very old, but not much experience. They have not grown up. So there are some exceptions as well. But as you can see here, there is a correlation between age and experience, and you can draw an imaginary line that somehow connects these dots that you see in this picture. Another thing to consider about the scatter plot is that X value is typically assumed to be independent or uncorrelated with each other. You preferably want to plot your dependent variable using the y-axis and your independent variable using the x-axis. Bubble charts are similar to scatter plots. They also show you the relationship between two variables. But the difference is that now you have a third dimension that is displayed through the size of the bubble. So you can actually show more than two variables. You can actually depict the relationship between more than two variables using the size of the bubbles. Radar chart is also used for comparing values across categories and time, similar to the bar and column chart, and somehow retains some functions of the line chart. The values are depicted with the distance from the center. So the higher this distance, the greater the distance, the higher the value. So far you learned about different chart types, and it is important to choose the right chart type for the right job. You also learned that you can use different colors, shapes, and you can use size within the area of chart to depict other dimensions or to display other variables. There's been an old research by Cleveland and McGill that they measured visual perception, the accuracy of visual perception for humans. They figured out that humans are really good in perceiving the position. And then the next thing is length. Then it's the angle or slope, area, volume, color, the hue of the color, and then density or saturation of the color. So when you are trying to choose your chart type, what this implies is that you always put your most important variables, the ones that matter the most, on your x and y axis, because people, human, they're really good at perceiving position. Going back to the bubble chart, remember bubble chart is an extended version of a scatter plot in which you depict the third dimension using the size of those bubbles. In some data analytics softwares and visualization software, you also have a good ability to incorporate color. So in something like RapidMiner, you use bubble chart. You can actually depict four different dimensions, two dimensions using your x and y axis, and one dimension using size or area, and the last dimension using the color. So again, according to this one, you always go with the most important ones. You will put them in X and Y, the ones that matter, the ones that are critical in conveying your message to your audience. They need to be positioned in your X and Y. Then, depending on what you want to do, you can use other dimensions and other graphic clues to convey your meaning. Now that you've learned about different chart types and why they're used for, it's time to think about choosing a chart type. So the first question that you need to ask yourself and answer it properly is that what do you want to accomplish with the chart? Do you want to show that something is changing over time? Or you want to show that how are things are comparing across different categories? For example, sales of different categories, sales of equipment, sales of footwear, and other categories of sales. Or you want to know how things contribute to the whole. So depending on what your answer is, then you can narrow down your chart type. Also, if you are at the stage of data understanding and exploring, or you want to convey your understanding to your audience, then you have to look for charts that helps you get a better insight about your data. Scatter plots are always good to start with, and other charts that help you get a better understanding of your data are histogram and box whiskers. So when it comes to reporting, remember that you always need to go with the simplest and the least crowded chart. So think about color. If you can display something only using black and white and shades of gray in between, only use that. You are not going to use a new color. So if you decide to use different coloring, you have to have a good reason why adding colors to your chart will make it better, will help your audience to understand your meaning better, to understand what you want to tell better. You are not going to use colors because it makes your chart cooler. No. Always when it comes to charts and you want to add one dimension, one element, you have to ask this question. Will this help my audience, my readers, to make better sense of what I'm trying to tell them? To understand my report better, to understand the point better? If that's true, you are going to use it. So you always go with the simplest and least crowded chart. And you always make sure that you describe the chart and what it says in your report. You will come with a clear narrative for your chart. Even if you are using a simple line chart that is very clear, the x-axis is clear, the y-axis is clear, the legend is there, everything is clear. And it clearly shows that, for example, sales are increasing or decreasing over time. You still need to have a narrative accompanying that chart, because you never know how other people may perceive even something simple from your chart. And if for any reason you decided to go with more complicated chart form, such as going with a radar chart instead of a line chart, you remember both of them are good for displaying trends across categories and time. But you decide to go with a radar chart instead of a line chart, you make sure that your narrative is super clear, and you make sure that you are there at the time of presenting your report to your supervisor or your report to the team, so you can actually explain what that more complicated, less convenient or less usual chart means. Because it's very easy for people not to get your point, not to understand your point. Your point is always very clear to you in your head, and you think it's clear on your writing, you think it's clear on the chart, but that's not always the point, especially when the chart complexity increases. Here is a graphic by Andrea Boa that can help you in choosing your charts depending on what you want to convey to your audience. It's a good reference to go to whenever you are going to decide on what type of chart you are going to use in your report. You can also download a PDF, high resolution PDF of this chart by going to the extremepresentation.com, and link also is provided in the handouts to the PDF for this graphic. And finally, chart junk. I already mentioned this issue in choosing chart type slide, but remember that you always have to go with the simplest and the least crowded chart that you can find. On the left, we have a chart junk, a chart that has a lot of information on it, but it's not really readable. You see that we have that grid, we have that gray color, and we have our data table below the chart. These are all unnecessary. So when you are coming up with charts, you will go with the least amount of information that you can use to convey your point. And remember, adding a color is adding information to your chart. Adding dots, adding shapes, these are adding extra information. So you will go with the least amount of absolutely necessary information and absolutely necessary visual features to convey your meaning and convey your point to your audience. You only add a new feature if that feature helps your audience to understand your meaning better. And here are the references to that graphic for choosing charts and the research on human visual perception. This slide concludes a recording on data visualization, and please don't be shy to ask any questions you may have on this subject during the class time.